I wasn't supposed to be there that night. Let me be clear about that from the start. The Castellano charity gala wasn't my world. I was a freelance photographer who could barely afford rent in a Brooklyn walk-up that smelled like old curry and regret. But when Marcus from the agency called with a last-minute gig paying triple my usual rate, I didn't ask questions. I should have. Mom's medical bills had been piling up since her stroke 3 months earlier. The hospital sent letters in red envelopes now, the kind that make your hands shake when you open them. So when Marcus said some wealthy family needed event coverage for their fundraiser, I grabbed my camera and pretended I belonged in that world. The Grand Celestial Hotel ballroom looked like something out of a dream I couldn't afford to have. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across marble floors. Women wore dresses that cost more than my car. Men in tailored suits moved through the crowd like sharks in expensive fabric. Classical music floated through the air, mixing with champagne bubbles and low laughter. I kept to the edges, my camera a shield between me and all that wealth. That's the thing about being a photographer at events like this. You're invisible. People look through you, not at you. You're part of the furniture, there to capture their importance and then disappear. I moved through the crowd, snapping shots of donors writing checks, politicians shaking hands, society wives comparing jewelry. Standard stuff. Boring, really. I was already planning how to pay the electric bill when I saw them. 2 men stood in a shadowed alcove near the terrace doors. One wore judge's robes beneath an open coat. I recognized him from the news, Judge Harrington, the one always talking about being tough on crime. The other man had his back to me, but something about his posture made me stop. Authority. Danger. The kind of presence that bends the air around it. My photographer's instinct kicked in before my common sense could catch up. The lighting was perfect, the composition almost artistic. I raised my camera and fired off 3 quick shots as the judge accepted a manila envelope from the man in the shadows. That's when he turned. Ice blue eyes locked onto mine across 30 feet of crowded ballroom. In that split second, I understood 3 things. 1, I'd just photographed something I absolutely should not have seen. 2, the man staring at me was Dante Castellano, the name whispered in my neighborhood with equal parts fear and respect. And 3, I was in serious trouble. The music didn't actually stop. The conversations didn't really die. But in my memory, that's exactly what happened. The whole world held its breath as Dante Castellano moved through the crowd toward me. He walked like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. Every person in his path stepped aside without even realizing they were doing it. My hands started shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my camera. I thought about running, but my legs had turned to water. When he reached me, he didn't grab my arm or threaten me. Instead, he smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, the kind that made you wonder if you'd ever feel safe again. "Dance with me," he said. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. Or things get complicated. The ballroom had gone completely silent now. Every eye in the room was on us. I could feel the weight of their attention like physical pressure against my skin. Later, I'd realized that was the genius of it. By making the moment so public, he'd trapped me. Refuse, and everyone would know I'd seen something, make a scene, and I'd never leave this building alive. My mouth had gone dry. I don't think. I'm not asking. He extended his hand, palm up. Still that terrible smile. Everyone's watching. You can dance with me and smile, or you can make this difficult. Your choice. It wasn't a choice at all. I placed my camera on a nearby table with trembling fingers and took his hand. His grip was firm, not quite painful, but I could feel the strength in it, the promise of what those hands could do. He led me onto the dance floor. The orchestra started playing again, a waltz, something classical and beautiful that felt completely wrong for this moment. His hand settled on my waist, pulling me close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. Smoke, maybe? Or blood. "Smile," he whispered against my ear. "Like your life depends on it." I smiled. God help me. I smiled like I was having the time of my life. "What did you see?" His voice was conversational, like we were discussing the weather. "Nothing. I didn't see anything." The lie sounded pathetic even to my own ears. Don't insult me. His fingers tightened slightly on my waist. You're a photographer. You see everything. That's your job. We turned across the floor, and I caught my reflection in one of the huge gilt mirrors. I looked terrified despite the smile. He looked calm, controlled, completely in charge. I was just taking random shots. I tried again. I don't even know what I photographed. Then you won't mind deleting them. Of course not. I can delete them right now. No. He pulled me slightly closer. To anyone watching, we probably looked intimate. Romantic even. Not here. Too obvious. You're going to finish this dance. Then you're going to take a few more photos. Then you're going to go home, and my associates will meet you there to collect your camera and all your files. My heart hammered against my ribs. And then we'll see. His eyes held mine, and I saw something flicker in them. Not quite regret, but close. I don't like complications, Iris. He knew my name. Of course he knew my name. Men like Dante Castellano knew everything. I won't say anything to anyone, I whispered. I swear. I'll delete everything. You'll never see me again. I believe you mean that. The waltz was ending. He released me slowly, stepping back but keeping eye contact. But meaning something and being able to do it are very different things. He walked away without another word, disappearing back into the crowd. I stood alone in the middle of the dance floor, trying to remember how to breathe. I picked up my camera with numb fingers and took a few more shots on autopilot. My hands were shaking so badly that most of them came out blurred. Nobody seemed to notice. The gala continued around me like nothing had happened, but I felt like I was moving through water, everything distorted and slow. I left as soon as I could without running. The cab ride back to Brooklyn took forever. I kept checking over my shoulder, expecting to see black SUVs following me. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every stranger's glance felt like surveillance. When I finally made it to my apartment building, I practically ran up the 4 flights of stairs. I fumbled with my keys, hands still trembling, and burst through my door. 2 men in dark suits were sitting on my couch. Miss Volkoff, the older one said, standing smoothly. We're here for the camera. I'd been home less than 30 seconds, and they were already inside, waiting. That's when I truly understood. Dante Castellano owned this city, and now somehow, he owned me too. Would you keep dancing with the devil if it meant staying alive? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. They didn't take just my camera. The 2 men, I never learned their names, and I don't think I wanted to, took my laptop, my external hard drives, even my phone. They went through my apartment like professionals, checking drawers, looking under furniture, searching for any device that might hold copies of those photos. I stood in my own living room feeling like a stranger in my own life. Mr. Castellano will be in touch, the older one said before they left. He handed me a new phone, still in its box. Use this from now on. Your old number's been transferred. Then they were gone, and I was alone with the weight of what had just happened. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the building made me jump. Every car that passed outside felt like a threat. I kept thinking about Dante's eyes, that cold calculation behind them, and wondering what came next. The answer arrived 3 days later. My new phone rang at exactly 8 in the morning. Unknown number. I'd been getting a lot of those since that night, all from the same source. Miss Volkoff. It was him. That voice I'd been hearing in my nightmares. I have a job opportunity for you. I almost laughed. It came out more like a sob. A job opportunity. I need a photographer for my legitimate business ventures. You'll document charitable events, restaurant openings, real estate acquisitions, standard corporate work. The pay is exceptional. And if I say no? Silence on the other end, long enough that I could hear my own heartbeat. I don't think you'll say no, he finally replied. Your mother's hospital bills are quite substantial. This position comes with health insurance, full coverage, no deductibles. She could transfer to a better facility. The kind with actual rehabilitation programs, not just warehousing. My blood ran cold. You looked into my mother? I look into everything. No apology in his voice, no shame. Be at Giordano's restaurant tomorrow at noon. Wear something professional. My head of security will brief you on your duties. He hung up before I could respond. I spent the next 24 hours trying to find a way out. I called Marcus at the agency, but he'd suddenly never heard of any gala booking. I tried researching Dante Castellano online, but every article was carefully sanitized. Philanthropist, businessman, community leader. Nothing about the reality everyone in the city knew, but nobody said out loud. I was trapped, and we both knew it. Giordano's was the kind of Italian restaurant that didn't have prices on the menu, all exposed brick and candlelight, where the waitstaff moved like dancers and spoke in hushed tones. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing my only blazer and praying I looked more professional than terrified. A woman was waiting at a corner table. She was maybe 40, with close-cropped black hair and a scar running from her left eyebrow to her cheekbone. She wore a leather jacket like armor and had the kind of eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. Iris Volkov. It wasn't a question. Sit. I sat. I'm Raven. I handle security for Mr. Castellano's operations. She slid a folder across the table. Your contract. Read it carefully. Sign nothing until you understand exactly what you're agreeing to. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The salary made my eyes water, more than I'd made in the past year combined. Health insurance, as promised. Even a company car and equipment allowance. This is too much, I whispered. It's exactly enough. Raven's expression didn't change. You'll be on call 24/7. You go where Mr. Castellano needs you, when he needs you. You photograph what he tells you to photograph. You see nothing else. You say nothing to anyone. Those are the terms. And if I break them? She leaned forward slightly. Don't. The threat was clear enough. I picked up the pen with numb fingers and signed my life away in blue ink. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I documented charity poker tournaments where men in expensive suits donated ridiculous amounts to children's hospitals. I photographed restaurant openings where Dante pressed flesh with city councilmen and smiled for the cameras. I captured ribbon-cutting ceremonies at community centers that bore his family name. And everywhere I went, I saw the contradictions. Dante would intimidate a rival with a single look across a crowded room, then turn around and tip a struggling waitress $200 for a $20 meal. I watched him have a screaming argument with one of his men over some business dispute, then spend an hour teaching a kid how to tie his tie properly before a scholarship dinner. He was terrifying and gentle, cruel and protective, everything and nothing I expected. I started capturing those moments without meaning to, the way his expression would soften when children were around, how he always remembered staff members' names, the small kindnesses that didn't match the monster everyone said he was. You're getting too close, Raven warned me one afternoon. We were in the car between locations, and she'd been watching me review my shots. I can see it in your photos. You're starting to see him as human. Isn't he? Men like Dante Castellano gave up their humanity a long time ago. Her scarred face was unreadable. Don't fall for his charm. Don't convince yourself he's something he's not. Men like him don't love. They possess. They don't protect. They control. Remember that, or you'll end up like me. What happened to you? She touched the scar on her face. I forgot that lesson once. I won't forget it again. That night, I went back to my apartment, the one I could suddenly afford to keep because of blood money and compromised morals, and I made a decision. I called Victor, my roommate, the one person who'd been checking on me since this nightmare started. Victor was good people. He worked in tech, kept to himself, always paid his half of the rent on time. We weren't close, but he was safe. Normal. Everything my life wasn't anymore. Hey, I said when he answered. Can we talk? 20 minutes later, we were sitting in our cramped kitchen, and I was telling him everything. Not the specifics. I wasn't that stupid. But enough that he'd understand why I'd been so distant, so afraid. I'm trapped, I finished. I don't know how to get out. Victor listened carefully, his expression thoughtful behind his wire-frame glasses. Then he said something that felt like a lifeline. I know a journalist, investigative reporter who's been trying to expose corruption in the city for years. If you could get him evidence, real documentation, he could protect you. Witness protection, new identity, the works. Hope bloomed in my chest for the first time in weeks. You really think that could work? I think it's your only shot. He squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. Get me copies of your photos, everything you've documented. My friend will know what to do with them. I hugged him, nearly crying with relief. Finally, a way out. Finally, someone who could help. I didn't notice the way his eyes stayed cold even as he hugged me back. I didn't question why he was so eager to help or how he happened to know exactly the right person. I was so desperate to believe in rescue that I missed all the signs of a different trap closing around me. Some betrayals happen slowly, like rust eating through metal. Others happen in a single night. I spent 3 days copying files for Victor. Every photo I'd taken, every event I'd documented, everything Dante's world had let me see. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that exposure meant freedom, that someone needed to stop men like him. I told myself a lot of lies that week. The night everything shattered started quietly enough. Dante's driver picked me up at 7, a routine I'd grown used to. But instead of another restaurant opening or charity function, we drove to the outskirts of the city where streetlights grew sparse and buildings sat abandoned. Where are we going? I asked, my photographer's instinct already feeling wrong about this. Mr. Castellano has something to show you, the driver said. Nothing more. We stopped in front of an old theater, the kind that used to show movies before multiplexes killed them off. The marquee was dark, half the letters missing. But through the broken windows, I could see construction lights glowing inside. Dante stood in the lobby, hands in his pockets, surrounded by sawdust and possibility. This was my brother's favorite place, he said without preamble. Every Saturday, our mother would bring us here. He loved the old films, the way stories could transport you somewhere better. I'd never heard him mention family before. Never heard that softness in his voice. What happened to him? His jaw tightened. He was 14 when they took him. Traffickers working the docks, promising kids work and delivering them to hell instead. He walked deeper into the gutted theater, his footsteps echoing. I found him 3 years later. Too late. What they'd done to him. He stopped, his back to me. Some things you don't come back from. My camera hung forgotten around my neck. This wasn't a photo opportunity. This was something rawer, real. I'm rebuilding this place, Dante continued. Film programs for neighborhood kids, free admission, a safe space where they can dream about being somewhere else for a few hours. He turned to face me, and his expression was unguarded in a way I'd never seen. Not everything I do is about power or profit. Some things are just about keeping promises to ghosts. The air between us felt charged, dangerous in a completely different way than before. Why are you telling me this? Because you look at me like I'm a monster. He moved closer, and I should have stepped back but didn't. And maybe I am. But monsters are made, not born. I want you to understand that. I don't need to understand you, I whispered, but it was a lie. I was already understanding too much, feeling too much, seeing the human underneath the horror. Dance with me. His voice was quiet. No threat this time. Just a question. There's no music. There's always music if you listen close enough. He extended his hand, and this time when I took it, it wasn't from fear. His palm was warm against mine as he pulled me close in that empty theater, construction dust drifting through, the air like snow. We moved in silence, just the sound of our breathing and the distant hum of city traffic. His hand on my waist felt different now, less like a cage, more like an anchor. I know you're terrified of me, he murmured against my hair. You should be. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details. Then why tell me about your brother? Why show me this? Because I'm tired of being seen as only one thing. His fingers tightened slightly. And because you're the first person in years who looks at me like I might be capable of something other than violence. I should have pulled away. Should have remembered Raven's warning, remembered that men like him don't love, they possess. But in that moment, with dust motes floating through construction lights and his heartbeat steady against my cheek, I forgot to be afraid. That's when his phone exploded with notifications. The moment shattered like dropped glass. Dante released me immediately, his entire demeanor shifting from vulnerable to lethal in a heartbeat. He pulled out his phone, and I watched his face go cold. What's wrong? Someone leaked information about my operations. His voice was ice. The Kozlov family is moving against me. 3 of my men are dead. My waterfront warehouse is burning. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? He looked at me then, and all the warmth from moments before had vanished. In its place was pure calculation. It means someone betrayed me, someone with access to information about my movements, my properties, my vulnerabilities. Who did you tell? Each word was a blade. No one. I swear I haven't said anything to anyone. But even as I said it, Victor's face flashed through my mind. The copies I'd made, the journalist he knew. Oh God. Dante must have seen something in my expression because his eyes narrowed. You're lying. I'm not. Don't. He stepped closer, and suddenly he was the man from the gala again, all threat and power. I can see it in your face. You told someone. Who? My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. Message after message coming through. Give me your phone, Dante ordered. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The messages were from Victor. Where are you? Need those files tonight. My contact is ready. Iris, answer me. This is important. Dante read them over my shoulder. His silence was worse than any anger. Your roommate. His voice was flat. You gave my files to your roommate. He said he knew someone who could help me. A journalist who could expose corruption. Get me into witness protection. Victor Kozlov. Dante's laugh was bitter. You gave classified information to a man whose last name should have been your first clue. The world tilted. What? He's Kozlov family. Has been for years. They planted him in your building 6 months ago, long before you ever met me. Dante's phone rang, and he answered it without taking his eyes off me. Raven, lock down all properties. Assume everything's compromised. He paused. Yes, including her. Wait, please. You just handed the Kozlov family everything they need to destroy me. His expression was emptier than rage. Every location, every business, every person under my protection. Do you understand what you've done? I couldn't breathe. Victor wasn't helping me escape. He was using me. I didn't know, I whispered. That doesn't make the damage any less real. Dante turned away, already making calls, mobilizing his people. Raven's taking you to a safe house. You don't leave, you don't call anyone, you don't so much as look at a computer. What are you going to do? He glanced back, and for just a second, I saw something that might have been regret. Whatever it takes to keep my people alive, even if it means making decisions I'll hate myself for. Dante, if you betrayed me on purpose, I'll know by morning. His voice was gentle now, which somehow made it worse. And if you didn't, you get to live knowing you did it by accident. I'm not sure which is worse. 2 of his men appeared in the theater doorway. One was Raven, her scarred face unreadable. Take her, Dante said. Maximum security. No communication with the outside world. As they led me away, I looked back once. Dante stood alone in that half-built theater, surrounded by his brother's ghost and my betrayal, and I realized I'd destroyed the only honest moment we might have ever had. The safe house turned out to be a luxury apartment with bars on the windows. Raven posted guards outside the door and confiscated my phone. I tried to warn you, she said before leaving. Men like him don't get happy endings, and the people who care about them don't either. I was alone with my guilt and the growing certainty that I'd just made a catastrophic mistake. Not because I'd betrayed Dante, but because I'd trusted the wrong person entirely. Outside the window, the city lights glittered like broken promises. And somewhere out there, Victor was probably celebrating his successful con while Dante's world burned. If you're enjoying the story so far, drop a like and subscribe to show your support. We cherish each of our supporters, and we would not be able to keep producing these stories without your amazing help. They say the truth will set you free. They're wrong. Sometimes the truth just changes which cage you're trapped in. I spent the first hour in that safe house pacing like a caged animal. The apartment was beautiful. Exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that cost more than my entire life. But beauty doesn't matter when you can't leave. When armed guards stand outside your door and you're waiting to find out if the man you betrayed will decide you're worth keeping alive. The second hour, I cried. Ugly, gasping sobs that I muffled in expensive throw pillows because I didn't want the guards to hear me, falling apart. By the third hour, I was angry. Angry at Victor for using me. Angry at Dante for making me care. Angry at myself for being stupid enough to trust either of them, but mostly angry that I was sitting here helpless while my mistakes got people killed. That's when I noticed the laptop. It sat on a desk in the corner, sleek and silver, probably worth more than most people's cars. The guards had taken my phone, but they'd missed this. Or maybe they assumed it was locked down, secure, nothing I could access. They were wrong. I'd spent weeks photographing Dante's world. I'd been in his offices, his restaurants, his private spaces. I'd watched him work, seen him type passwords when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Photographers notice everything. It's literally our job. My hands shook as I opened the laptop. No password required. It was already logged in, probably Raven's or one of the guards. I should have stopped there, should have closed it and waited for whatever judgment Dante decided I deserved, but I'd already destroyed everything. What was one more betrayal? I found his files in less than 10 minutes. The encryption was good, but not good enough, and the password was one I'd seen him use before, his brother's name and the year he disappeared. What I found inside made me physically sick. The first folder was labeled Cooperation Agreement. Inside were FBI documents, official letters, case numbers. Dante Castellano had been a confidential informant for 2 years, not just providing tips, actively feeding the federal government evidence of organized crime operations. But not his own crimes. These were trafficking rings, prostitution networks, drug operations that targeted children. The worst of the worst. The things that even criminals had codes against. I clicked through file after file, my stomach churning. Here was evidence of a trafficking operation Dante had helped dismantle. There were the case files for a prostitution ring that had been targeting runaways, shut down because of information Dante provided. This document detailed a drug distribution network selling to middle schools, destroyed because Dante wore a wire to meetings and recorded everything. The photos I'd taken that first night at the gala, the ones that started this whole nightmare. They weren't evidence of corruption. They showed Dante passing the FBI evidence of Judge Harrington's involvement in the trafficking ring. The judge wasn't being blackmailed. He was being exposed. I leaned back in the chair, my mind reeling. Dante wasn't just a monster. He was a monster trying to kill bigger monsters. Then I found the personal files. There were reports about children rescued from trafficking operations. 43 kids in 2 years, all because of Dante's information. There were photos of them being reunited with families, starting new lives, getting second chances. And there was a letter, handwritten, never sent. It was dated 6 months after Dante's brother disappeared. Matteo, I found you too late. I'm sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life being sorry. But I swear on everything we were to each other. No one else's brother will end up like you if I can stop it. I'll burn this whole city down if that's what it takes. I'll become the thing I hate if it means keeping other kids safe. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, but I'll save everyone else I can. Your brother always, Dante. Tears blurred my vision. This wasn't the man I thought I knew. This wasn't the monster everyone said he was. This was someone broken trying to fix a world that had destroyed the person he loved most. I kept searching, desperate now to understand. That's when I found Victor's file. Victor Kozlov, deep cover operative for the Kozlov crime family, embedded in my building 8 months ago, 2 months before I ever photographed that gala. His entire purpose was to get close to someone in Dante's organization, and when I fell into his lap with my photos and my fear, I became the perfect weapon. The file included transcripts of phone conversations, Victor reporting back to his handlers, Victor laughing about how easy I was to manipulate, Victor planning exactly how to use my access to destroy Dante from the inside. One transcript was dated 3 days ago. "She's ready. Completely trusts me. I'll get the files tonight and we move on Castellano's operations tomorrow. The girl's too stupid to realize she's been playing for our team all along." I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to go back in time and never take that gig, never photograph that moment, never trust anyone ever again. But more than anything, I wanted to fix this. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I copied everything, every file, every document, every piece of evidence showing what Dante really was and what Victor really wanted. I found the FBI contact information in Dante's files, the agent he'd been working with all along, Special Agent Morrison, direct line included. I drafted an email with shaking hands, attaching everything: the truth about Dante's cooperation, Victor's real identity, evidence of the Kozlov family's operations, everything I'd seen and everything I now understood. In the subject line, I wrote, "From Iris Volkov, the girl who accidentally started a war and needs to help end it." My finger hovered over the send button. Once I did this, there was no going back. The FBI would know. The Kozlovs would know. Dante would know that I'd broken into his files again, violated his privacy again, seen his deepest secrets again. But this time, maybe I could use what I'd learned to save instead of destroy. I hit send. The email went through just as I heard voices outside the apartment door. Not the usual guard rotation. These voices were urgent, aggressive. Then the door crashed open. Victor stood in the doorway, gun in hand, 2 men behind him. His friendly smile was gone, replaced with something cold and calculating that I should have seen months ago. "Hello, Iris," he said, stepping inside. "We need to talk about your boyfriend, and you're going to help me kill him." Redemption isn't always clean. Sometimes it's bloody. What would you sacrifice to make things right? Tell us where you're watching from and what your answer is. I'll be in the comments. They say hindsight is 20/20. Right now, mine was showing me every red flag I'd ignored for months. Victor's gun stayed trained on me while his men secured the apartment. Raven's guards were unconscious in the hallway. Not dead, thankfully, but definitely not coming to my rescue anytime soon. "You look surprised," Victor said, that fake friendly smile still playing at his lips. "Did you really think those guards could stop me? I've been planning this for 8 months, Iris. Every detail, every contingency. How did you get past them?" "I am them." He laughed. "Half of Dante's security has been on the Kozlov payroll for months. We've just been waiting for the right moment to move." My mind raced. The email I just sent, had it gone through? Had Agent Morrison received it? Or was I about to die having accomplished nothing except proving Raven right about trust? "What do you want?" My voice was steadier than I expected. "What I've always wanted." Victor pulled out my phone, the one Raven had confiscated. "You're going to send a message to Dante. Tell him you know everything. Tell him you'll go to the real authorities unless he meets you. Alone. He'll know it's a trap." "Of course he will, but he'll come anyway." Victor's smile widened. Because despite everything, despite his legendary control and his reputation for cold calculation, Dante Castellano has developed a weakness. You. My heart hammered against my ribs. "You're wrong." "Am I?" "I've been watching him for weeks, Iris. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one's paying attention. The way he changed his schedule to accommodate your shoots. The way he told you about his brother. Something he's never told anyone. Victor moved closer, and I could smell coffee on his breath, see the excitement in his eyes. He cares about you, which makes you the perfect bait. I won't do it. Yes, you will. He pressed the gun against my temple, cold metal kissing my skin. Because the alternative is, I kill you right now, dump your body in the river, and send him photos of what's left. He'll still come for revenge, but at least this way you get to live. Your choice. My hands shook as he handed me the phone. What would Dante do in this situation? What would someone who'd spent years playing both sides, surviving in a world of constant betrayal, do? He'd play along. He'd buy time. He'd look for an opening. What should I say? Victor dictated the message word for word. Professional, clinical. The kind of text that came from leverage, not emotion. I know everything about the FBI, about your cooperation, about what you really are. Meet me at Riverside Warehouse, midnight, alone. Or I take what I know somewhere that won't be as understanding as I am. My finger hovered over send. In that moment, I made a decision. A small one, barely noticeable, but it was mine. I added 3 words before hitting send. Dance with me. Victor didn't notice. He was too busy coordinating with his men, too confident in his control of the situation. But Dante would notice. Dante would remember that first night, that threat, that moment when everything changed. He'd know something was wrong. The drive to Riverside Warehouse took 30 minutes. Victor kept the gun on me the whole time, talking like we were old friends catching up instead of captor and victim heading to an execution. You know what's funny? He said, almost conversational. I actually liked you. You were kind, genuine, the kind of person who doesn't exist in my world. He shook his head. Shame you got involved with Castellano. You could have had a normal life. And you? I asked, my voice bitter. What's your excuse? What made you into this? His expression hardened. Survival. The Kozlov family saved me when I was 16, gave me purpose when I had nothing. Family loyalty isn't just words in my world, it's everything. Even if that family traffics children, destroys lives, Dante was trying to stop that. Dante is a traitor and a hypocrite. Victor's grip tightened on the gun. He built his empire on violence and blood, then suddenly decides he has a conscience. He doesn't get to play hero after everything he's done. He doesn't get redemption. But you do? He didn't answer that. The warehouse was exactly what you'd expect. Abandoned, isolated, full of shadows and rust. The kind of place where screams wouldn't carry and bodies could disappear. Victor's men dragged me inside, my feet scraping against concrete. They tied me to a chair in the center of the space, ropes tight enough to cut off circulation. Industrial lights hung overhead, creating harsh pools of illumination surrounded by darkness. He'll come, Victor said, checking his watch. 20 minutes, long enough to set up, short enough that he can't organize a full response. I tested the ropes while he wasn't looking. They were professional, tight, secure. But there was a technique Raven had shown me weeks ago during a conversation about self-defense. She'd been demonstrating on a length of cord, showing how to create slack by positioning your wrists correctly. I'd photographed the whole thing, including the step-by-step process. Photographers remember everything. While Victor coordinated with his team, 8 men positioned throughout the warehouse, all armed, all waiting. I worked on the ropes. Slowly, carefully, creating just a little bit of slack, just enough room to maneuver. You know what happens next, right? Victor called from across the warehouse. Dante walks in to save you. We capture him alive. The Kozlovs want to torture information out of him about his FBI contacts. Then we kill you both and dump the bodies where they'll never be found. Clean, simple, effective. And the trafficking operations start up again, I said, my voice steady despite the fear. Business as usual. Victor shrugged. There's money in human suffering, Iris. Lots of it. Dante's crusade shut down millions in revenue. The Kozlov family wants that back. How do you sleep at night? Like a baby. He smiled. Conscience is a luxury I can't afford. Headlights cut through the warehouse windows, a single car approaching slowly. Victor's smile widened. Showtime. Dante Castellano walked through those warehouse doors alone, hands visible, no weapons in sight. But his eyes, his ice blue eyes, found mine across that space, and I saw something in them that made my breath catch. Not fear, not calculation, fury wrapped in terrible, cold control. Let her go, Victor, Dante said, his voice carrying across the warehouse. This is between you and me. Oh, I will, Victor replied, gun already aimed. Right after you tell me everything. That's when I worked my hands free of the ropes. That's when I screamed the truth I'd learned. He's FBI. You're all already compromised. And that's when the entire warehouse exploded with federal agents. Chaos has a sound. It's the crack of flashbangs, the thunder of boots on concrete, the screaming of men who thought they were predators realizing their prey. It's the moment when the hunter becomes the hunted, when carefully laid plans detonate into violent confusion. Victor's face went from triumphant to horrified in the space of a heartbeat. What did you do? He snarled at me, but his gun was already swinging away, looking for targets in the sudden flood of tactical lights and shouted commands. FBI agents poured through every entrance, doors, windows, even rappelling from the skylights. They moved with military precision, weapons trained, voices coordinated. This wasn't a rescue thrown together in minutes. This was a planned operation. Drop your weapons, FBI, down on the ground now! Victor's men scattered like roaches in sudden light. Some tried to run, others raised their weapons. The warehouse erupted into gunfire. Sharp, controlled bursts from the agents, panicked, wild shots from the Kozlov operatives. Dante was already moving. He crossed the distance to me in seconds, his body low, using the chaos as cover. A bullet sparked off concrete inches from his head. Another shattered a light above us, raining glass. He didn't flinch. Are you hurt? His hands were already on my ropes, the ones I'd loosened but hadn't fully escaped. I sent them everything, I gasped. Your files, Victor's identity, all of it. I sent it to Agent Morrison. I know. His eyes met mine for just a second, and something passed between us. Understanding, trust, the fragile beginning of forgiveness. He called me 15 minutes ago. The whole task force was already mobilizing. He pulled me up from the chair, his arm going around my waist to shield me with his body as we moved toward cover behind a concrete pillar. More gunfire, more shouting. One of Victor's men went down screaming. This way! A woman's voice cut through the chaos. Raven appeared from the shadows, blood running down her face from a cut above her eye, gun in hand. East exit. Morrison's team has it secured. But Victor wasn't done. No! His scream was primal, furious. No, no, no! 2 years of planning, months of playing that pathetic photographer. This was mine! He emerged from behind a shipping container, gun raised, eyes wild. But he wasn't aiming at the FBI agents. He was aiming at me. Time did that thing it does in moments of crisis, stretched out like taffy, every detail crystallizing into razor focus. I saw Victor's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the calculation in his eyes, the decision that if he couldn't win, he'd at least take something from Dante that mattered. Saw Dante's expression change from controlled to desperate. He moved before I could scream. His body slammed into mine, throwing us both sideways as the gun went off. The bullet meant for my chest found different flesh, Dante's shoulder, the impact spinning him around, blood blooming dark against his white shirt. We hit the ground hard. My head cracked against concrete. Stars exploded across my vision. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard more shots, more screaming, and then Victor's voice, high and panicked. Officer down? We have an officer? No, wait! The FBI didn't wait. Victor Kozlov died the way he'd lived, surrounded by violence, drowning in his own choices. I didn't see it happen. Dante's body was covering mine, his weight pressing me into the ground, his blood warm and spreading against my shoulder. Dante? My voice came out small, terrified. Dante, stay with me. Still here. His voice was tight with pain but steady. Takes more than one bullet to kill me, Solnishka. I didn't know that word. Later, I'd learn it meant little son in Russian. Later, I'd understand it meant something that had started as strategy had become something entirely different. But right now, all I knew was that he was bleeding because of me. Clear! The shout echoed through the warehouse. All hostiles down or contained. Medic to the center floor, now. Agent Morrison appeared above us, a black man in his 50s with kind eyes and a face carved by too many operations like this one. Castellano, Ms. Volkov, let's get you two out of here. Paramedics swarmed around us. They tried to separate Dante from me to treat his wound, but his grip on my hand was iron tight. She stays with me, he gritted out through clenched teeth. She doesn't leave my sight until I know she's safe. Sir, you're losing blood. Then work faster. They stabilized him there on the warehouse floor, cutting away his shirt, packing the wound. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, clean through, missing the bone and major arteries. Lucky, the paramedic said. I watched Dante's face as they worked, saw him breathe through the pain without making a sound. Why? I whispered. Why did you do that? His eyes opened, finding mine through the haze of shock and adrenaline. Because I've lost enough people I care about. I'm not losing you too. Around us, FBI agents were processing the scene. 8 Kozlov operatives arrested, 3 dead including Victor, evidence being catalogued, statements being taken, the systematic dismantling of months of planning, years of infiltration. Agent Morrison crouched beside us, his expression grave but not unkind. Ms. Volkov, the email you sent, that was brave. Reckless, but brave. He glanced at Dante. You picked a hell of a time to develop a conscience, Dante. She didn't develop it, Dante said, his voice strained. She's always had one. That's what makes her dangerous to people like Victor. And to you? Dante's grip on my hand tightened fractionally. Especially to me. Morrison pulled out a tablet, showing us surveillance footage. We've been tracking the Kozlov infiltration for months, but we couldn't move without proof. Your files gave us everything we needed. Victor's real identity, his communications, the whole network. He looked at me with something like respect. You just handed us the biggest organized crime bust in a decade. What happens now? I asked. Now? Morrison stood, gesturing to the organized chaos around us. Now we process this scene, take your statements, and finish what Dante started 2 years ago. The Kozlov family is done. Their trafficking operations, their drug networks, their entire infrastructure, we have enough evidence to bury them for generations. He looked at Dante, and something passed between them. Professional respect, maybe, or just the acknowledgement of a job finally finished. Your cooperation agreement is fulfilled, Castellano. Full immunity, as promised. You're free to walk away from all of this. Morrison's expression was unreadable. Question is, what are you going to do with that freedom? Dante didn't answer immediately. The paramedics were trying to move him to a stretcher, but he resisted, his eyes never leaving mine. I'm going to do something I haven't done in 15 years, he finally said. I'm going to choose what comes next instead of letting the past choose for me. They loaded us into the same ambulance despite the paramedics' protests. Dante lay on the gurney, his shoulder bandaged, his face pale but determined. I sat beside him, our hands still clasped, unwilling to let go even as we pulled away from that warehouse of bullets and betrayal. Through the ambulance windows, I watched the building recede, saw the FBI agents working, saw the evidence of a war that had finally ended, saw the place where I'd almost died, where Dante had taken a bullet meant for me, where everything had changed again. Iris. His voice was soft, heavy with exhaustion and pain medication. When I heal, when this is all over, there's something I need to ask you. What? His eyes were already closing, the adrenaline crash and medication pulling him under. But his last words were clear. If you'll give a monster trying to be a man one more chance to get things right. I held his hand all the way to the hospital, tears streaming down my face, and whispered back words he probably didn't hear. You were never just a monster. That was the problem all along. Hospital rooms all smell the same. Antiseptic and old coffee, industrial cleaning products trying to mask the reality of blood and pain and bodies breaking down. I'd spent enough time in them with my mother to know these are places where life and death negotiate, where futures get decided by machines that beep and doctors who speak in careful hedges. Dante's room was nicer than most. Private floor, extra security, flowers sent by people whose cards I didn't read because I didn't want to know which criminals were wishing him well. But underneath the surface comfort, it was still a hospital room, still a place of vulnerability he'd probably never let himself be in before. He survived the surgery easily. The bullet had been clean, the damage minimal. Lucky, the surgeon said, which felt like an obscene word for someone who'd taken a bullet meant for someone else. I stayed through that first night, refused to leave even when Raven showed up with clean clothes and offered to take me home. Home felt like a foreign concept now. My apartment was compromised, contaminated by Victor's months of deception. How was I supposed to sleep in a place where my roommate had been planning my death? He's stable, Raven said, reading my thoughts, or maybe just my face. You should rest. Actual rest, not this vigil thing you're doing. I can't leave him. She studied me with those sharp, knowing eyes. You're in love with him. It wasn't a question. I should have denied it. Should have made up some excuse about guilt or obligation or feeling responsible. But I was too tired for lies. I don't know what I am. Except that he took a bullet for me. Except that everything I thought I knew was wrong. Except that monsters aren't supposed to choose to save people who might destroy them. They're not, Raven agreed. She touched the scar on her face absently. I told you once that men like Dante don't love. That they possess, they control, but they don't give themselves away. She paused. I was wrong. They don't love easily. They don't love often. But when they do, they love absolutely. And that's more dangerous than any bullet. She left me alone with that truth. Dante woke up on the second day. His eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the light, and found me immediately in the chair beside his bed. You're still here. Where else would I be? He tried to sit up, winced, and settled for turning his head toward me. Anywhere. Away from this mess. Away from me. That's not how this works. Iris. No. I leaned forward, taking his uninjured hand. You don't get to take a bullet for me and then tell me to leave. You don't get to decide alone what happens next. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe, or fear of a different kind. Over the next 3 days, we talked. Really talked, without the pressure of his world or my fear between us. He told me about growing up in his father's shadow, learning that mercy was weakness and love was leverage, about Mateo's disappearance and the years of searching, the moment he found his brother's body, and something fundamental broke inside him. I became everything my father wanted me to be, Dante said, staring at the ceiling. Ruthless, strategic, capable of extreme violence. And I was good at it, Iris. I built an empire on fear and blood, and I'd tell myself it was all for Mateo, all to make sure no one else's brother suffered what he did. But, I prompted gently, but you can't build something good from something rotten. The more powerful I became, the more I enabled the very things I hated. I was facilitating the drug trade, the violence, the exploitation, all while telling myself I had standards, that I was better than the others. His laugh was bitter. I was a hypocrite with good intentions. That's when Agent Morrison had approached him. 2 years ago, quiet overture in a dim bar. A chance to actually make a difference, to use his position to dismantle operations from the inside. A chance at something resembling redemption. I took it because I had nothing left to lose, Dante admitted. No family, no real loyalty, just an empire that felt like a prison. I thought maybe if I could save others, it would balance the scales somehow. Did it? No. Blood doesn't wash away with more blood, but at least those 43 kids got to go home. At least some trafficking routes got shut down. At least I tried. I told him about my mother, about being raised by a single parent who worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, about learning photography as an escape, a way to see beauty in a world that felt overwhelmingly gray, about the desperation that made me take that gala job, the fear that kept me trapped, the moment I'd realized Victor had been using me all along. "I'm sorry," Dante said, "for dragging you into this, for keeping you close out of fear, for every moment you felt like a prisoner." "I'm not." The words surprised me, but they were true. If I hadn't been dragged into your world, Victor would still be embedded. The Kozlovs would still be operating. Those kids you helped save, there would have been more after them. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. He squeezed my hand gently. "You sound like you're trying to justify staying with a monster." "I sound like someone who's figured out that people are more complicated than the labels we give them." On the 5th day, the FBI made their formal offer. Agent Morrison laid it out clearly. Full immunity in exchange for testimony that would help secure the Kozlov convictions. Witness protection available if Dante wanted it. A chance to disappear, start over, build a life without the weight of his past. "What would that look like?" Dante asked. "New name, new city, new identity. We'd help you establish a legitimate business, make sure you're financially stable. You'd be free, Castellano. Truly free. Maybe for the first time in your life." After Morrison left, Dante stared at the witness protection paperwork for a long time. "What are you thinking?" I finally asked. "That I've spent my whole life building an empire I didn't want, hurting people to protect people, becoming a monster to fight monsters. And now I have a chance to just walk away from all of it." He looked at me. "What would you do?" "I'd burn it all down and start over." The answer came easily. "I'd take the immunity, testify against everyone who hurt those kids, and then I'd disappear. Build something honest, something that doesn't cost pieces of your soul." "Would you come with me?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with possibility and risk. "Is that what you want?" "I want to not be Dante Castellano anymore," he said quietly. "I want to be whoever I might have been if my brother hadn't been taken, if my father hadn't taught me that love was weakness, if I'd had choices instead of obligations." He met my eyes. "And I want you to see who that person could be. Not the crime boss, not the informant, just me." Raven appeared in the doorway then, as if summoned by the weight of the moment. "FBI wants your answer by morning," she said. "They need to know if you're taking the deal." After she left, I stayed close to Dante's bedside, both of us silent with the enormity of what came next. "I don't know how to be normal," he finally admitted. "I don't know how to exist without the structure of the life I've built." "Then we'll figure it out together." I brought his hand to my lips, kissed his scarred knuckles. "Because you were right about one thing. This is complicated. It's probably going to be a disaster. But I'd rather have a disaster with you than safety alone." His expression softened in a way I'd never seen. Vulnerable, hopeful, almost young. Outside the hospital window, Manhattan glittered in the darkness. The city that had made him, broken him, and maybe, just maybe, would let him go. In the morning, Dante Castellano would sign immunity papers and disappear from the world he'd built. But tonight, he was just a man holding the hand of a woman who'd seen the worst of him and decided to stay anyway. Sometimes that's all redemption is. Someone choosing you despite knowing exactly who you are. 6 months changes everything and nothing. Portland in spring is a city of rain and possibility, where the gray sky feels less like oppression and more like permission to start over. I'd never imagined myself here, 3,000 miles from the life I knew. But then again, I'd never imagined most of what the past year had brought. My mother was not entirely in support of my decision, but after she recovered, she didn't want to hold me back. Witness Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in the Pearl District. Exposed brick and industrial windows, Edison bulbs hanging from raw beams, white walls waiting for stories to be told in photographs. I'd spent 3 months renovating it with my own hands, learning how to spackle and paint, how to install track lighting and hanging systems. Creating something from nothing felt like its own form of redemption. The centerpiece collection was titled The Invisible War, 47 photographs documenting the aftermath of trafficking operations, the faces of survivors who'd agreed to let me tell fragments of their stories. Their eyes held things that shouldn't have to be held, but they also held strength, defiance, the stubborn persistence of people who'd survived the unsurvivable. 43 of them had been rescued because of information Dante provided. I'd tracked them down through victim services, asked permission, listened to their stories. Not all of them wanted to participate, but enough did. Enough to create something that mattered. Tonight was opening night. I stood in my gallery, wearing a simple black dress I'd bought specifically for this moment, and watched strangers move through my work. They studied each photograph carefully, reading the small placards I'd written explaining context without exploiting trauma. Some people cried, some people got angry, everyone left changed. That's what art is supposed to do, change people. Iris Volkov? A woman approached, elegant and composed, her badge identifying her as a reporter from Portland Monthly. This collection is devastating, powerful. How did you gain access to these subjects? I was in the right place at the right time, I said carefully, and I knew someone who was fighting this war from the inside. He helped me understand that behind every statistic, there's a person who deserves to be seen. I'd become good at those careful answers. The FBI had been very clear. Dante's cooperation was sealed, his new identity protected, his past officially buried. I couldn't mention him by name, couldn't reference his role, couldn't lead anyone back to the man he'd been, but I could honor what he'd done in the only way I knew how. The reporter moved on to interview one of the survivors, and I found myself alone in my own gallery, surrounded by my work, feeling the absence of the one person who should have been here. He'd left the hospital against medical advice, disappeared into witness protection before the testifying even began. Agent Morrison explained it was for safety. The Kozlovs still had allies, and Dante's testimony would bury enough people that revenge was guaranteed. Better to vanish completely. Build a new life far from anyone who knew his face. I'd understood. Even agreed it was the right choice. That didn't make it hurt less. For 3 months, I'd rebuilt my life without him. Moved to Portland, started the gallery, attended therapy sessions where I tried to process trauma and loss, and the surreal reality of falling in love with a crime boss turned informant. The therapist was patient when I cried through entire sessions, less patient when I insisted I didn't regret any of it. You experience captivity, manipulation, violence, Dr. Reyes would say. It's okay to be angry about that. But I wasn't angry. I was grateful for the complicated mess of it all, for the way it had transformed me from someone who hid behind a camera to someone who used a camera to tell truths people needed to hear. The gallery was starting to thin out, people moving toward the champagne and small bites I'd catered, the social part of the evening beginning. I was accepting congratulations from a local art critic when I felt it. That shift in the air that meant someone was watching me with more than casual interest. I turned slowly, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. He stood near the entrance, half in shadow, wearing a simple charcoal suit that looked nothing like the tailored armor I'd seen him in before. His hair was different, shorter, less styled. A beard covered his jaw, changing the shape of his face. Without the expensive clothes and the aura of power, he looked younger, almost ordinary. But those ice-blue eyes were unchanged. Dante, except not Dante anymore, some other name in some other life, walked toward me through my gallery. People moved aside without realizing they were doing it, that old instinct still written into his bones, even if everything else had changed. He stopped in front of me, and I could see the evidence of 6 months on his face. Sun-weathered skin, calluses on his hands, a peace in his expression that hadn't been there before. Dance with me? He extended his hand, referencing that first night, that moment that had started everything. Things are complicated enough already, I replied, but I was smiling, tears already blurring my vision. His hand was warm and real and there. They always are with us. I took it. let him pull me close in the middle of my gallery, surrounded by photographs of survival and second chances. Someone turned on music. I didn't see who, and suddenly we were swaying gently while my guests pretended not to watch. "What have you been doing?" I whispered against his shoulder. "Construction. Rebuilding that theater in Manhattan, the one I showed you. Turns out I'm decent with my hands when I'm not using them to hurt people." He pulled back to look at me. "It opens next month. Theater programs for kids, film education, exactly what Mateo would have wanted." "You went back?" "I had to finish it, to make one thing right." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "And then I had to find you, to see if you meant what you said, about building something together." "I meant it." I was crying now, not caring who saw. "I've been waiting for you." "I know. I've been watching your gallery progress online, reading every article about your work. You're doing something important here, Iris. Something that matters." "So are you." We danced slowly, two people who'd found each other in darkness and violence, now choosing each other in light and possibility. Around us, the gallery hummed with conversation, with people discovering stories that needed to be told. "I'm not him anymore," Dante said quietly. "Dante Castellano is legally dead, buried under immunity agreements and sealed files. I'm just Michael now. Michael Torres, a contractor from Portland who's trying to figure out how to live without looking over his shoulder." "Michael." I tested the name, smiled. "It suits you. New name, new life, new choices." "Same feelings, though." His hand tightened on my waist. "Those didn't change." An older woman approached us then, her eyes wet with tears. She was one of the survivors I'd photographed, a trafficking victim who'd been rescued 3 years ago and was now studying social work. "Your collection," she said to me. "It's the first time anyone's shown us as people instead of statistics. Thank you." She walked away before I could respond, but her words hung in the air like benediction. "You did that, Michael." Not Dante, Michael now said. "You documented my empire falling, and now you're documenting what comes after. Survival, recovery, the hard work of becoming human again." "We're doing it together," I corrected. "Your information saved them. I'm just showing people their faces." The evening wound down slowly. Guests left with catalogs and promises to return. The reporter finished her interviews. My assistant started cleaning up champagne glasses and forgotten programs. Michael stayed through all of it, never far from my side, this stranger wearing a familiar soul. When the gallery was finally empty, we stood together in front of my favorite photograph. A young girl, maybe 16, holding a photo of herself from before her captivity. Her eyes held both versions of herself, the broken and the healing. "She reminds me of you," Michael said. "How so?" "She survived something that should have destroyed her, and she chose to keep going anyway, to build something from the wreckage." He turned to face me fully. "That takes more courage than anything I ever did in my old life. You took a bullet for me. You brought down an entire crime family. You spent 2 years risking your life to save strangers. I did it for selfish reasons. Guilt, revenge, trying to balance scales that don't balance." He cupped my face in both hands. "You did it because you actually give a damn about people. That's the difference between us." "Maybe." I covered his hands with mine. "Or maybe we're both just people trying to make something good from something terrible. Maybe that's enough." He kissed me then, soft and careful, like he was afraid I might disappear. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Normal life, normal relationship, being someone who builds instead of destroys. Then we'll figure it out together." I echoed the promise I'd made in the hospital. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one dance at a time. Outside, Portland rain started falling, soft and persistent, washing the streets clean. We stood in my gallery, surrounded by images of people who'd survived the unsurvivable. And for the first time in either of our lives, the future felt like possibility instead of predetermined fate. In the Mafia, I said softly, repeating something he'd told me once. Love isn't forbidden, it's fatal. But we're not in that world anymore. Michael pulled me close again, already swaying to music only we could hear. We're in this one, where love might actually be the thing that saves us. We danced in my gallery as rain fell outside, two people who'd found each other in violence and chosen each other in peace. His past was buried. My gallery was open, and the future stretched ahead like an unphotographed moment, full of light and shadow and infinite possibility. Sometimes redemption isn't about erasing what you've done. It's about building something worthy of the second chance you've been given. Sometimes dancing with the devil means teaching him how to waltz in the light. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's exactly what both of you needed all along. In the Mafia, love isn't forbidden, it's fatal. But sometimes, surviving that fatality means finally learning to live. Thanks for dancing with us through this story. Drop your thoughts below. We love hearing from you.